Hey, welcome everyone to this Friday's live stream here at the Nutmeg Tavern. And if you haven't been with us before, you probably have, but if you haven't been with us before, I'm John Townsends, your host. You probably see me on lots of cooking episodes, whatnot. There are other folks here. We've got, he's not ready yet, behind the bar, but he's not there right now. Ryan, there he is. There's Ryan. Ryan's behind the bar, and he's mixing up a drink for us today. Something we haven't had in the Nutmeg Tavern recently or ever. And then we've got some guys behind the scenes. Aaron is on the console. He's making it happen over here on the console, making sure all the technical stuff is working and all that good stuff.
These guys.
What? These guys? What?
Every week.
Every guy. And another one of these guys back there is Kyle.
Hello.
He's on the question seat. He's the guy who's monitoring the chat. He's looking for good questions. If you've got interesting, fun questions, send them in there. He's going to choose through those. He's going to put his hand in the hat, pull them out, and ask me questions as we go along today. It has been one of those kind of fun, tricky, interesting weeks here. We're working on the catalog. We're doing lots of interesting stuff here behind the scenes, getting ready for the next season, thinking about projects that we want to work on this year, special projects for the channel, as well as other projects. So lots of fun planning going on, and maybe working on sets for taking pictures, and lots of good stuff. So. And unfortunately, we've been so busy with doing certain kinds of work that I haven't been able to do some Wednesday videos. Hoping to get back on the Wednesday video horse, and hopefully next Wednesday you'll have one of those kind of Wednesday videos. I don't know what we call those. You never know what they're going to end up being. So, do we have anything special I need to talk about right now?
No, we can go straight into questions.
So, what do you think, Kyle? Do you have any questions?
I do. This first one says, "Hi, John. Love your channel. Do you know any journals or pattern books written in the 18th century? I am a costume designer / illustrator, and I can't find any primary sources to base my work."
So you're looking for costume design for the 18th century and pattern books. Now, there are French fashion plates, and French fashion, especially women's fashion, was incredibly important for the 18th century, so you'll find those. There's even a Dover book with French fashion plates that give you some idea. They had fashion plates like that, and they also made dolls to sort of transmit these fashion ideas to other parts of the world. So dolls would come to North America. They'd go to England especially. Even when there was a war going on, they'd still have these dolls moving back and forth to show what the latest fashions were in France. If you're looking for costuming or just clothing ideas, really art is the place to go to see what the art is like. And there's just thousands and thousands of wonderful paintings and drawings and illustrations for the 18th century to get ideas from. So that would be my suggestion.
Hey, what's Ryan doing back there?
He's making a lot of noise. He's heating up. He's heating up the drink, and his fire is noisy.
His fire.
Yeah, fire.
When is the next collaboration with Ivy and English Heritage?
We haven't talked to English Heritage lately, and we'll have to think about something and pitch the idea to them. So
Yeah, if we were to do another one, it would probably have to be either they come here or we go there, but that's a major project. That's big. You guys are going to have to really pitch in Super Chat if you want me to go to England.
This one says, "Hey, John and the rest of the Townsend crew, what's your favorite cocktails? Period or contemporary?"
Oh, I would go with a period thing. I mean, cocktails I'm not really big versed into modern things, so if I'm going to do that, I'm definitely going to do a period interesting variation. Something with a lot of nutmeg. What do you think, Ryan?
I'm not a big cocktail drinker. I like to drink liquor straight.
Just straight up.
Yep.
Well,
Bourbon straight. Thank you.
I would agree with that. I'm much more of a straight guy than a cocktail person.
Aaron's not going to tell us.
I didn't. What was I? Oh, what drink? Oh, sorry. I was monitoring chat. No. I don't think I have a favorite.
Could you tell someone's social standing by their last name?
I think that there's certainly a quantity of that going on, especially, say, in Great Britain. That definitely probably isn't as true here in North America.
We know Townsend was a lowly place.
Which nation was the most influential when it comes to early American cuisine?
What was that?
Which nation?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you're at, right? And of course, we've got a tremendous influence of so English foods here in North America, but depending on where you're at in different sort of colonies, you'll have different stresses. So if you're in the New York area, you'll have a much higher Dutch influence in your cooking. If you were in other places, you would have more influences by different cultures that come in. So it really depends exactly where you're at as to where that main sort of influence is coming from.
Does the origin of the term buck in reference to money originate from trading buckskin hides?
I'm thinking yes. Although many of these words, you can find various different ideas about where they came from and where the true roots to a word are. And sometimes there's more than one, and you can get more than one answer, and they both seem right. As you go back into history, some of those words get very murky as to where they actually come from. But a buck and the buckskin is a very plausible answer. Let's call it that.
Did barbers perform surgery and pulling teeth?
Yeah, but that's really where a lot of that surgery stuff is coming from. That barber connection that was probably a 16th and 17th century connection, and it still works into the 18th century. A lot of people were also, some of those folks that were doing that surgery were, they were sort of self-trained because they were butchers, true butchers of animals. And then once you see what's going on inside the animal, you understand. And so some of those people moved on to being surgeons. It isn't rare at all for that sort of thing to happen. And medicine in the 18th century is pretty scary stuff.
That's pretty nuts. It's like,
it is.
I put together a model car, so now I'm a mechanic.
Well, it's a lot like that.
Let me get a couple donations while we wait for our wine.
Yeah, I'm getting excited about this.
It smells good. I can smell it from here.
I've been working on this all day.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Caltoid 5.
There he is. Yep.
In It's a Wonderful Life, Clarence the Angel, born in the mid-17th century, asks the bartender for a flaming rum punch, but says it's not cold enough. How cold should it be for flaming rum punch? Okay. And then Muggles are cool too.
Yeah.
They just say England money.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. And then Ty Jordan.
We need a big jar back here for the trip to English heritage.
At what point did steel become available in consistent and standardized shapes and alloys? Is it true that smiths were often also bankers in early settlements due to their ability to make coins? Okay, so we'll start with the flaming rum punch. How cold should it be?
It was looking pretty darn cold in It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, and I don't think it really has to be that cold for you to want a warmed drink. Now, I'm not sure about a true flaming drink from the 18th century. I haven't seen any references to that. There certainly seems to be references to warmed up drinks, warmed ales, and warmed up other ones where you'd use the toddy irons and you'd warm up your cocktail or just your beverage, as it were. And those warmed drinks, a lot of those we drink very cold. We drink on the rocks. But if you want those flavors, they all come out when they're much warmer, don't they? So we'll find out today what this It's like a science lab going on back here. So yeah, I don't know exactly how warm we want to get. Was the next one the steel question?
Yeah. Consistent and standardized shapes. When did that become available?
Yeah, and some of that discussion is in the Jamie Tyree video where Jamie's talking about the wrought iron and exactly what that was like in the 18th century, and the stock sizes are much less. I mean, you had these giant, hunks of bar stock that you had to work down. So it was a lot more work to get the stock down into the size that you needed to make the piece you were interested in. The bar stock might come in like 2 by 2 inches by 2 inches in just a short piece to make it much easier to ship. And then you would have to work that down into long, thin pieces. That modern idea of having all these different sorts of sized stocks available is a very, very modern concept. So I don't know when that really started to happen, but certainly here in the 20th century, there in the 20th century, is when that sort of multitude of stocks being available is going to come into being. And as for that banker idea and being able to make money, I don't know. That's an interesting topic, and I haven't really don't have a good answer for that one.
I think that's it for the donations.
Good.
Oh, I guess one more real quick.
Okay.
It just came in. Might as well get it. Another one from Keltoid5. Thank you.
Thank you.
In the newer videos, are we hearing new music too? Newer, I think. When did their last record come out? About 9 months ago.
You're right. Well, we did the Whitby Abbey. Have you used some of that?
Yeah, that's what I've been using mostly.
Right. So the Whitby Abbey one, which was
almost a year ago?
Last year, I believe.
Was it? That's right. Because
we did the live
had
stream,
them
I think,
here. Right.
Well,
and
we've gotten more music coming from them in the next coming months.
We do. We're working on a special project and a video project, and it's going to have an accompanying CD that has their music in it. So there's something coming right up, and they're probably in the audience right now. Thank you guys for that great work you did on that project for us.
I got a nice donation from Julie Stevens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick and
Thank you
Hillary,
very
if you
much.
guys are in the chat, I sent your book today. It's on its way.
Okay. So Rick and Hillary, your book is on its way.
All right. Let's see here. Where was most black powder manufactured?
Yeah, it was. His hand was shaking as he delivers it to me.
Steaming.
I burned it.
Did you?
Well, not the drink, but my hands.
Oh, ouch. Sorry about that. What, can you see it steaming here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Oh, gosh, I gotta grab mine too.
It smells completely different than what it was earlier, so you probably did burn it.
Does it smell interesting?
Yeah. Smells interesting. I don't know. I'm going to let this cool for a minute. I don't know, and serving it up in a horn cup is...
Oh. Just try a sip.
Woo! Yeah.
Ooh, that's good.
It's got a bit of a bite.
It's great.
I like it.
Explain to them what we're drinking here, Ryan.
We're drinking hot mulled wine. And so, it is hot. You are going to make a syrup you're going to take 2 cups of water and put 2 cinnamon sticks in, a tablespoon of cloves, and a dash of nutmeg, and boil that down till it's a cup. So you're making a syrup out of it. Add that to a quart of wine, heat that back up, sweeten it, and there you go. And what you guys are smelling is, I spilled some on the fire back here, and that's why it smells like scorchy, but this isn't burnt, and it tastes pretty good, I think. Do you like it, John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I actually like it quite a bit.
Very interesting.
As it cools down, I'll get you another one, and we can see what the taste change is.
So this is hotter than it should be?
No, this is you're supposed to catch it right at the boil.
Okay.
So this is right where it's supposed to be.
This tastes like something that you would drink like during Christmas time or
Right.
something like that.
Well, it being winter, I thought that this would be a really good drink to have. And we had a cold front come through, and it was super cold, and then it warmed up to like 50 degrees, and then the day is the first cold day again, so I wanted to get
Back
a cold
down
day
to 10
drink.
degrees or something.
Welcome to Indiana.
Right.
And windy.
Yeah.
10 degrees and really
Yeah.
windy. So you need something like this to warm you up.
Right.
Do you guys know anything about 18th century mosquito netting? Did they have mosquito netting back then?
I think there was some. So today, especially in different places in the world, I mean, not where we're at, but in different places in the world, there obviously we have to worry about mosquito-borne diseases, malaria and other mosquito-borne diseases. There's a little bit of that around here, West Nile disease, something like that. And we think of needing mosquito netting to keep the mosquitoes off because of that specific problem. We don't want to get bitten. We don't want to get, malaria or whatever. They didn't know where those things were coming from in the 18th century. So they weren't as scared of mosquitoes. They did, they were just the nuisance factor that mosquitoes are. I think I've seen some references to hanging cloths or, gauze that they would put over things to keep away mosquitoes, but it wasn't as big a thing. Except, of course, to scare away the mosquitoes, they would just use wood smoke and whatnot. The Nolan Bark House book talks a lot about, creating smoke to keep the mosquitoes away. And there are some other specific references to that, but not as much about the idea of netting or screen, whatnot.
So are they using wet wood to purposely make more smoke?
Yeah, they would use like wet wood shavings, and they would put those on the fire, or they would. In the Nolan book, he talks about how they were clearing wood all the time, woods or trees from around their house, and they would just have these great big piles of wood that were burning all the time, and that would create this kind of pall of smoke around their house constantly, and the cows would come home to sleep in the smoke because it kept the mosquitoes off.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. This one says, "Hi John, would you be willing to do some videos on quilts and quilting? I've done my own research and love to sew myself, but I can't find it, but I find it so interesting." Sorry.
Yeah, quilts and quilting, and it's I think what we think of today, like patchwork quilts and quilting, is a bit more of a 19th century thing, but they certainly did quilting as in sewing in those quilting kind of patterns into garments, and it's a rich, interesting topic to dig into. So it would be a fun topic. I'm not sure if what I'd need to do is find a really good person to interview and talk to about that.
Did mulled wine originate in Sweden or Germany or somewhere else entirely?
I do not have the answer for that.
Ask the bartender.
Yeah, that's, I don't know.
No. Okay.
Because I think it's actually a pretty old thing.
Yeah,
that
it's
you'll
kind of
find
like it's
in,
always been.
Like 13th, 14th century, you're going to find references to that same sort of thing.
Why study the 18th century and not the Victorian era?
Picking this particular time period, number one, it's what I've always done. So, but it's also and specifically, it's the founding of the United States, that core time period, 1776, et cetera, right? So that's one of the reasons why we sort of focus in on that. But it's also a very, very good time period because of what's happening during that time period versus compared to what's happening today. They had these amazing clashes of culture that were happening in the 18th century, whether that's Native American cultures, European cultures coming together, all these clashing cultures, and we see things happen whenever you rub these different cultures together. You're going to get sparks, you're going to get different sorts of things and different sorts of answers to those clashes. We also have this really interesting change from an agricultural society to one that's much more industrialized that's happening in the 19th century. We're doing that same kind of thing right now, where we're going from a mechanized or an industrial society to this information-based society. So trying to figure out what's happening today, where it's going to happen, we have to look back to those same sorts of precedents going on in history, and this 18th century is a perfect time period to see what's happening, what the final outcomes were, what their choices, their ideas were, what they had to get rid of, what they kept. It's a perfect time period to study, to understand what's happening today, and to figure out what's going to happen in the future. How about that?
How was frostbite treated in the 18th century?
Probably rather poorly. You see references to rubbing snow on it and whatnot. It's things that we would not do today to alleviate that problem. And a lot of that has to do with the idea that today we study how to do medicine very, very strictly, maybe still not as strictly and as we should, but in the 18th century is much more hit and miss, trials and the references, the people that had the experience, possibly the actual knowledge, did not write that down and pass it down like happens today, where people spend lots of money studying a particular problem and talking about what the true answer is to this problem or that problem. I think we still have a long way to go in medical research and what the answers are, but it was so rudimentary and so, such in its infancy, studying medicine in that way in the 18th century, that you see these treatments being just scary, weird, off the top of their head. I don't know, just very strange. Oh, you got more for me. He's got more for me. I didn't have enough. Here, let me.
It's better out of the mug than the horn cup.
I think you're right. Horn cups really are meant for cooler temperature.
I only put it in the horn cup because I didn't think folks watching had seen the horn cups, but then I realized my mistake.
Someone was wondering what wine you're using. What
red.
kind of wine?
It's something red.
Any middle of the road red wine works best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was this the Merlot or the other one? I don't know what it was. It was a red wine.
I didn't look at the label. I tasted both wines to see which one would pair better.
This one.
Yeah. Actually, this was the only bottle that had some left in it after I was No, I'm joking.
They didn't have labels back then. You just had to taste it.
That's right.
I think it's pronounced Merlot.
Yes, I stand corrected.
What was the most interesting aspect of a historical site? I guess that's a...
What is the most? What is? Well, I mean, historic sites, and we have lots and lots of great historic sites here in the United States, and there are great historic sites around the world, and each one of them has their own particular thing that makes them, sometimes maybe 4 or 5 things, but they each have their own flavor. They're different staff members kind of bring out different ideas, and each site sort of has something special about it. And some sites are just full of really, really interesting things to go and see and check out. Mount Vernon was just incredible, for the interesting little things that you would find there.
But the thing is about that, it's like you feel like, I need to go to the ones that have these huge agricultural programs or something.
Right.
But when you go to historic sites that are basically just a walk-through museum, those are really interesting too. I don't think that there's necessarily a better thing about any of them.
Sometimes you want to ask that really good, that experienced staff member, what's the hidden gem of this site? So, Mount Vernon, everybody wants to go there and see the wooden teeth, right? But that's not the thing you want to go see. No. You want to go see the special hidden thing.
The coolest part about that site to me was how deep they go in their agricultural program, because they're using heritage crops that were on site and raising heritage breeds, and that was really neat. But
so, whether you go to a really interesting site like Genesee Country Village or, Conner Prairie, whatever, there are all these wonderful sites, and they each have their own interesting niche. You just got to find it and dig in on that. And sometimes it's a special personnel that has great, wonderful knowledge. Many times you'll find that sort of thing going on in a site, and most of the time, I don't know if I can think of any other situations where you will find people that are basically giving their time away for free, and they are amazing experts on different topics. So they really are a special set of people that work at those historic sites.
This one says, hi from Western New York. What kind of tea did they drink in the 18th century?
They had a great, wonderful set of teas. Maybe not the same kind of teas. Well, most of the teas we have today a lot of them are flavored teas that are, sort of fancy pantsy teas that they didn't have in the 18th century. They had gunpowder tea, which is a great, green tea, and then just straight up black, FOP kind of teas that we would use as the base for teas today, but that was the standard tea. Bohea tea, which was just sort of run of the mill. It just kind of meant, straight up standard black tea, oolong teas. Lots of fun teas for the 18th century.
How prude was society of the 18th century when it comes to clothing? What did people wear when it was hot?
Many times you'll see people suffering through that, especially in situations, say, like in Great Britain. If it's hot out, people are suffering because fashion is more important than comfort. And it really depends on the strictness of society as to whether or not you're more concerned about fashion or comfort. When you get to North America and as you go back into the backcountry, you're going to find less and less concern for whether I'm wearing the proper outfit and whether I'm wearing something that's much more comfortable. And so you'll find people, traveling to those areas and just being what are they wearing? They're just running around half naked. It's terrible. So there's definitely, depending on where you're at, a completely different idea about whether comfort is more important or the proper fashion or whether you're wearing the right thing. So that's certainly part of what's going on in the 18th century. And hey, same kind of thing happens today, doesn't it?
I'm going to do some donations real quick.
Sure.
We've got a few more coming in.
Right.
Some nice donations. Thanks, everyone. We did Julie Stevens. I don't think I read what she said.
Okay.
She said, can't stay for the whole thing, but wanted to make sure I sent you a contribution. Keep on doing what you do best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Joshua Kelly, thanks for all the great info. Wingy, any plans to do some gardening this year? What crops were popular pre-harvest for the typical household? It's a good question. Phantom Cream, can you bring back the I put nutmeg on my nutmeg shirt, please? We'll have to do another
Maybe we'll have
though.
to do a special run.
Yep. And then Natalie and Tara.
Natalie and Tara.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say hi and put a little in the England bucket.
Thank you,
Right,
Natalie
thanks,
and Tara.
Yep.
Well, everybody that's watching should check out Natalie and Tara's YouTube channel right now. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I still watch it and follow them on social media all over the place to get your stuff.
While we're talking about social media, Instagram, you ready for that?
Were there any questions in that lot?
Oh, yeah. Were there any questions?
The gardening. You have any plans on gardening?
I don't have any plans, but I can try to at least possibly touch on something like that in a Wednesday video, especially as we get a little bit closer. Everybody starts to get excited and wanting to put stuff in the ground way too early and all that good stuff. I'll see what I can do to at least fold something into a Wednesday video for that, because it's a great topic.
Yeah, we can go to Instagram.
Every week, almost every week, we dig through, we kind of sift through, take the spade and dig into Instagram, the Instagram feed, looking for things that are hashtagged Townsends, and it's fun to go looking through that to see what people do. We look for things that are historical related, especially historical recipes, maybe merch, Townsend stuff, whatever it is, as long as it's historical in some way, shape, or form. We dig through the feed and we pick out a winner every week and we send them something. So this week, what was the name?
Amanda Yazzle Dazzle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was a picture of nutmeg or mushroom ketchup.
Yeah. Right.
Nutmeg ketchup. Oh yeah. Mushroom ketchup.
Give me some of that nutmeg ketchup.
So
And powdered ink was in there.
yeah,
as well.
and powdered ink. So thank you so much for participating in that, Ryan. I'll get in touch with you, DM you on that. And I want to thank everyone who participates in the Instagram feed with the hashtag Townsends. It's always great fun to go digging through the feed, looking at that, and a lot of great fun pictures in the feed. So check them all out because it's a lot of fun. So I had a topic. We didn't talk about this too much beforehand, and I didn't. I'm always doing reading, and I've been doing a lot of reading in sailor journals, sailor memoirs of the 18th century, and one that it's hard to find. It's out of print, way out of print. It's almost time for it to pop into the public domain, and then maybe we'll make it available. It's Samuel Kelly, and it's called something like Journal of an 18th Century Sailor or an 18th Century Sailor, something like that. And he's right here. He starts his sailor career in the 1780s as a boy, and a very hard service it is. His father isn't able to support him, and so sends him off to sea because he can't support his son. And he has a lot of wonderful stories, especially early on, some of them heartbreaking stories. But I wanted to read a couple little references out of this. Here's 1781. He says, the sheep, they were down in the Caribbean. They had sailed from England to the Caribbean carrying some cargo. He says the ship was very leaky and it was heaving in the hold where the water came in. We heeled the ship over and found a rat had eaten through the side of the ship right at the water's edge. And so it's like, wonder why we're leaking. Well, some rat had burrowed through the wood planking right to the outside of the ship. And then he goes on to talk about more perils of the sea. He says, I remember a time being in our cutter, sort of one of their little boats that they would, not necessarily little, but 20, 30-foot boat that they would have to go closer inshore. We were being in our cutter sailing from Kingston to Port Royal, which is a ways in a smaller boat. The step of the foremast, the spot where the mast actually fits down into the boat, it gave way and the mast went through the bottom of the boat. We immediately took in the sail and put a jacket and trousers in the hole and began bailing out the water. And they had to be picked up by somebody else, or else they would have drowned in the ocean because their boat just basically fell apart underneath them. He talks about a section here about the food, and people have asked about copper being used as a metal for their cooking equipment. It says on one passage, many of the crew were attacked with excruciating pains in their bowels, and I believe nearly half of our men were confined to their hammocks. This disease our surgeons supposed to be the effect of a poison. Accordingly, the copper boilers were examined, and a quantity of verdigris was discovered on the inside of the peas copper, the pot that they made the peas in, which the cook's mate had neglected to clean as usual. He says, for my part, I escaped by not liking peas soup. And then he said that they did basically get everyone restored to health once they understood what was making everyone sick. It's a good thing it wasn't like, oh, these guys are all sick, we're going to give them pea soup to heal them, because sometimes that sort of happens. The one thing that's, the trouble.
That poor guy. He screwed up his job as usual.
Yeah, as usual. They traveled to the Madeira Islands. He says, I was then ordered to an English tavern to get my breakfast off of a cold-boiled neck of mutton and cold parsnips, for which, with a glass of wine, the captain was charged half a crown, which would have been a lot of money. That's 2.5 shillings. In the time period, this meal should probably have cost more like, 3 or 4 cents, maybe a a half a shilling instead of that much. So really expensive food. Obviously, is like stopping along the toll pike, or someplace, some tourist food. It costs that much. So, and this last one connects up with the idea of, let's see. I had another piece here. Uh-oh. I'm missing a page. Darn. Oh, well. He's talking about being on board ship and having to be up in the top of the masts, especially as a lookout. The motion at this extreme from the center was so great that unless we grasped very fast to the mast, with our way up in the top, it was sufficient to throw us a considerable distance into the sea, as if we'd been ejected from a sling, and the sensation was so disagreeable as if all our entrails were coming up into our mouths. This often caused vomiting and made me dislike it so much that I parted with my clothes to those which would go up in my turn. I believe my greatcoat and hair mattress also went to hire a substitute. So they would do anything to get out of this job that they had to do. And there's even a section, that's the piece I'm missing, of Nicholas Cresswell's journal, where it's one of those, unless you have a different reference, you're not sure what it means, but he talks about bartering a whole bottle of rum to someone so that they would go and do the duty up on the mast instead of him. So sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Ryan, your face while he was telling that story.
You don't want to go up?
He had a perfect way of describing it.
Yeah.
I'm still like, I've been the guy that got suckered into the too expensive on the side of the road food before.
Yeah, you just stop by. It's real cheap food. $30 for a hot dog. Ryan or Aaron just reminded me, had a note today that the Milk Street Radio, if you're interested, or have you ever seen Milk Street Radio, which is, I can't remember his name now. Christopher Kimball. Yes. He's got a podcast, and he interviewed me, I don't know, about a month ago. It is now up. It's the current episode on Milk Street Radio. Aaron's going to put a link in the chat, in the description.
I want to throw it in right
Whatever.
Now. It has multiple guests in it, but John is definitely...
I'm in that podcast.
I think you're interviewed first.
Oh, okay. There you go. So if you're interested in seeing what Christopher Kimball wants to ask me about 18th century cooking, check out that podcast.
Yeah, the title is Uncovering the Secrets of Palestinian Cooking. That's not John's part.
Yeah,
that's another guess.
Because I don't know about Palestinian.
He's a great authority on Palestinian cooking.
Right. Milk Street on PBS, too. Oh, for real?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but this is the radio part.
Got it.
So the podcast type part, not the television part.
Got it. That's all. Yeah, and it. I listened to a little bit of it. It's really good. You did a good job, John.
Thank you, Aaron.
Proud of you.
You got more questions, Kyle? Let's get away from this mushy stuff.
Yeah, I do.
Jeez.
Yes. Please. This one says, "Hi, John. When you do reenactments, do you sometimes see British soldiers wear wigs? Because I've looked everywhere for a powdered wig, but I have no luck."
Yeah, we do see that.
Yeah, it was many years ago. We offered wigs. There are some wigs available that you can get that are a quasi colonial style. So keep looking. You'll find something like that.
There's that wig company in Louisville.
Is there?
Yeah. Let me look it up real quick.
They do specialty, pretty interesting stuff. So see if you can find their link. Really a lot of soldiers, especially officers that are doing British in the Revolutionary War time period, wigs are very, very common, or the most common thing for that sort of service. And I've seen plenty of reenactors doing, especially officers, wearing wigs.
CustomWigCompany.com.
There you go.
Yeah, we see them at events here and there.
And they specialize in historical sort of probably 19th century and 18th century.
I believe so, yeah.
Check that one out.
John, do you have oh my gosh, what'd you put in this wine?
I know. I can't feel my lips.
I still got to drive home, too.
Do you know of any cookbooks from the early 19th century that have French Canadian recipes from after America gained Detroit and Illinois?
No, I am not familiar specifically with French Canadian cooking of the early 19th century. It can be really hard to research those things to get really hard and fast evidence, other than references in journals. But cookbooks per se don't generally kind of come to the forefront until things sort of mature a good bit and become different than the cultures that they are based upon. So you don't see North American, say American cookbooks until 1796 because their cooking isn't that much different than what they got from England. So they would just use English cookery books from that time period, or, you know, if they're from France, they would just use French cookbooks. And it isn't until you've got so much history and the differences in the cooking. So, you know, American cooking is going to be different than English cooking because our ingredients are different. So until those things really come to fruition, people don't need to publish those cookbooks, and then you start to see those showing up. So I am not sure about when the first real French Canadian cookbooks sort of pop into being.
What was, excuse me, what was an American whiskey / straight liquor like in the 18th century, and is it possible to buy and taste it today?
Yeah, a lot of companies, I can't say that it's exactly like it, but it's become a trend in the last, you know, however many years that a lot of companies that are distilling whiskey are putting out a straight white whiskey or a clear whiskey, corn whiskey. And that is really close to what you would have had in the time period. So I know that Buffalo Trace does one. I'm pretty sure that you can get a few different options from Heaven Hill. That's where I would start.
There you go. How were playing cards made in the 18th century in North America, and did they even exist back then?
North American, I doubt it. It's probably a thing that's mostly printed in France and in England, and in that 18th century time period. There's a great, if you want to see a sort of an idea about that, Diderot's Encyclopedia French from the late 18th century. There's a couple, 3 or 4 plates on playing cards, and in fact, we used to sell a set of playing cards based upon those illustrations. We might offer those again. We've lost one of our playing card options, so there's a chance that we might go ahead and print those again. But that's the best way to see exactly. And Diderot's Encyclopedia is just a wealth of knowledge about getting an idea about what industry was like in the 18th century, especially in France. But you can extrapolate a lot of that into England. You can see what those workshop ideas were like. Now, they may have been sort of idealized and cleaned up. You know, like the model factory is what you're going to see in the drawing, but you still get a really good idea about what it was like. And there's a section on making playing cards in Diderot's Encyclopedia. If I had a link that I could, you know, like mind meld into the computer, I would do that for you.
When you warm alcohol, doesn't it lose its potency?
Yeah, some of it's going away, but not as much as you might think.
No.
If you get it, that's the reason that a lot of recipes say get it just as it starts to boil.
Right.
Because you're not doing.
But you're always driving that vapor pressure higher, right, and some of it's going to evaporate.
Could you speak some on 18th century resurrectionists? Is it true they would steal cadaver hair for sell cadaver hair for wigs and teeth for dentures?
Oh yeah.
Are you able to get that link, Aaron?
What link?
Resurrectionist video.
Right. From Halloween of not this year but last year.
Yeah.
So
I just watched that video.
The person to connect with is who's at least doing most of that right now is Maggie Delaney. Carol Jarboe is doing a whole section. She spent a lot of time researching that whole resurrectionist theme. They might even be on the live stream right now, but they're the folks to dig into on that one. And yeah, they were all through that 18th century time period and into the 19th century, I mean, I think into the 20th century, there was still that idea that once a person dies, that body doesn't belong to anyone anymore. And so people would go and take the bodies out, maybe even take the bodies before they were buried, and the casket ended up being lowered into the ground empty, and then they would use those for medical cadavers and other purposes, selling the hair, selling the teeth. Those were things that were happening, and as long as the resurrectionist, a person who was the body snatcher, as long as they didn't take the clothing or jewelry of that corpse that was in the ground, the body per se wasn't owned by anyone. The clothing, the jewelry, that was, and so that was against the law, but taking the body itself wasn't. And so there was a large industry built up around this idea of selling, harvesting, if that's the word, I don't know, getting these dead bodies and then distributing them.
So yeah, I put it in the chat and I just threw it in the description box to that video.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to cover that some more in the future.
And I'd like to do a more in-depth one.
Yeah.
With her on that topic.
Yeah.
Like maybe even get out there and do a little bit of it.
I didn't say that. But
Well, it's funny because I reread Tom Sawyer earlier or late last year, and there's a grave robbing scene in that book, but there was mention that they suspected that the doctor might have something to do with it.
Oh yeah,
and that's 100 years later.
Sure.
And
Okay.
Yeah, not quite. Right. But and it was I guess considered to be public knowledge enough that children weren't surprised by it.
Right.
So.
Okay. How was glazing made for pottery in North America?
Some glazes are a clay-based glaze, and so you will find a glaze that has a lot of flux, or clay that has a lot of flux in it as it comes harvested from the ground, and it naturally turns into a glaze. And there are some places that those slip glazes are famous for. Of course, some of those have disappeared. Albany slip. That was a particular clay that turns into a dark brown or black glaze when it's fired at a particular temperature. So the clay isn't good as a clay that you would use for the body of your cup, but if you just turned it into a thin, kind of runny slip and you poured it over the top, it would turn into a dark brown glaze. So that's what's happening with some types of glazes. They're very, very simple. And other glazes, you have to grind particular chemicals up and mix them up to make a flux, something that turns into a glass at a lower temperature than the clay.
We got time for one more question, Kyle. But Aaron, do you have any donations first?
Time flies.
I think I got one.
Okay.
Oh, two actually. Wait, hold on. I think I'm missing some.
He's missing a lot. He's
weird.
He's
That's
been
weird.
Been
They went away. Like they got deleted. Yeah, the last one that's showing up is that one about the new music, and we did some since then. So, man, if I missed your donation, sorry. I don't know why they're not showing up down at the bottom. I'll try to find them. Unless that was the last one. I thought I saw some more coming. That wine.
Try some today.
Oh man, we have a lot of questions left over. To pick one. Oh, pressure.
Well, we can do three. I'll do speed answers.
Ooh,
okay.
Gosh, all right.
Rapid fire.
All right. Were there lighthouses in colonial America?
Yes.
Are you still using the dugout canoe?
Yes. It's not right this second. It's sunk in the pond, waiting to be pulled up, and I've got another one on the stocks. I'm chipping out another one right now.
That wasn't rapid fire, John.
Sorry.
It was
That was pretty quick.
Did ice cream exist in North America?
Yes.
Let's do more rapid fire. This is fun.
All right. Oh gosh, that was pretty much my rapid fire questions. John, what's your educational background?
It's all self-study. I have not gone to college for any particular, any historical topic. I did do a little college for like electrical engineering, but not for this stuff. So this is just me.
How did people deal with hearing loss in the war and battle of the 1800s or 18th century? Sorry,
they used little ear horns, like little trumpets, tin trumpets. They would put in their ear, and they were deaf.
How were beds and mattresses made in the 18th century?
Oh, they're bags stuffed with, straw or feathers or sometimes special herbs if you want them to smell nice or keep the bugs away. So basically a big bag, a tick.
How common was bison hunting in colonial America?
Pretty common if you're in that area. There were lots and lots of bison in the Kentucky, Indiana area in the late 18th century, and they harvested a lot of animals. There were just thousands of them.
Did you ever tell that story from Nicholas Cresswell on the live stream before?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just so the Nicholas Cresswell Journal, and he's 1774, and he's talking about herds and herds. He's in the Kentucky River area, so central Kentucky, central northern Kentucky, and giant herds of buffalo jumping over the river. You just see hundreds of animals, and at one point they have their canoes in the river. They're sleeping in them. Some people are on land, and the giant herd of buffalo come through, and they jump into and smash the canoe while people were sleeping in it. And and they were shooting. Oh, and there was that one section where they're in the river, and they're trying to kill this buffalo, and he's swimming in the river, and somebody's got him by the tail, and he's pulling the boat around, and they shoot him 5 or 6 times. Still doesn't die. Runs up on shore, gets away.
And that's all, folks.
That's the last question. Wow. An incredible live stream here in the Nutmeg Tavern. Thank you, Ryan, for the mulled wine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I will survive it. If I'm still here next week, it'll be incredible. Thank you, Aaron, on the console. Kyle on the question box. Thank you, both of you guys. And a special thank you to we got Patreon people. We got people supporting us on live streams. We got super chat. We got people that just watch and comment. Everything you do helps us so much. Thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for watching.